In today's video, we're going to talk about the ego, and we're actually going to dress the ego up so that we can recognize it a little bit more easily. I'm Stacy Rockline, and I help people learn to love themselves more unconditionally so that they can create deep, intimate relationships and they can receive love in their lives more easily. So let's talk about the ego. You know, the ego is that loud voice in your head telling you what you should or shouldn't do. It's fear-based, and it's not the voice of your heart and the voice of your spirit and your intuition. It's this other voice. And here's the crazy thing about the ego. On the one hand, all it wants for you is to be loved. Its job is to try to protect you so that you have that feeling of being loved and worthy. But it has a weakness, a pretty important weakness, in that it doesn't believe that you can be loved exactly as you are right now. Now, without that belief, then it constantly has to try to manipulate you into this idea of who it thinks you should be so that you will get love in your life or so that you won't be hurt. But the ego has a very distinct personality. And when we start to recognize that personality, then we can start to see it coming and we can work around it. So maybe your ego is like a rebel, right? In like a leather jacket and on a motorcycle. And what does the rebel do? You know, every time you start to feel confined or pushed into a box, it's going to rebel. Or maybe it can't trust other people to know anything, and so it has to go out and tell other people what to do or how to do things, or has to do things unique or be noticed as being unique and different. I don't know. If you've got a rebellious ego, though, you will know. Maybe it is a Goody Two Shoes, you know, with a prissy haircut and a buttoned up cardigan. I know this one, this is my ego, and that, for me, that plays out as rule following. So if I make a rule for myself, I have to follow it, or the ego is like angry. Or out in the world, the rules of society, laws, all kinds of rules that have been set up that weren't set up by me, and I may not even necessarily agree with, and my intuition might not even telling me I should follow. My ego wants to follow that because that's its personality, right? Maybe your ego personality is like the judge with a gavel, you know, and is out being really critical of the world and finding themselves right all the time, or having to express the opinion of the justice in a situation. You know, it could be that. Perhaps your ego is more of like a nurse figure, a helping figure, a doctor, and is out looking for ways to go help, right? Because that's how you're going to get your love. You're going to go help. And perhaps you end up in codependent relationships or abusive relationships because the ego doesn't quite get this right. It thinks it knows what's good for you, but it's really your intuition and your heart that knows what's good for you. So when we can dress the ego up and we can start to see that personality, it becomes predictable, right? So when it's predictable, then you can see it coming, or you can know when it's going to show up. You can see the situation you're in and you can think, okay, here we go. And guess who comes? The ego. Your rebel or your helper or your whatever is going to show up because it's predictable, right? But what's really cool about that is when you know it's coming, it's kind of like someone you're really familiar with. Like maybe there's a family member, you know, who you know, behaves a certain way, and so you learn over time how to tune them out because you know what they're going to say, you know what they're going to do, you know how they're going to behave. And when you tune them out, you can start to hear what's going on around you, and you can hear that voice inside you that is harder to hear when you've got the big squawking voice. So dressing it up can allow it to be predictable and to be seen and to be worked around. So get familiar with it, you know, go out, watch yourself in the world, watch it show up, and start to see how it shows up for you. And that's really cool because that's how you're going to move beyond it. And here's the tricky thing about the ego. As soon as you figure it out and you move beyond it, it's going to evolve and it's gonna shapeshift and it's gonna become a different version. And the fun part is that you're gonna get to grow with it and try to stay a step ahead of it and see the new iteration of the ego and go, ooh, that's tricky, that's new. You're not the rebel anymore. Now I see that you're this. But know where you're at right now. What does your ego look like? How is it messaging to you? And how is it getting things in your way that are keeping you from love? Because it is keeping you from love. 100% guarantee. But that voice inside you is not. So that's my challenge to you. What's your ego wearing? What's your ego's personality? How can you predict what it's going to do and then work around it so that you can bring love into your life? Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing this with anybody that you know who might find dressing up their ego a fun exercise and helping themselves open up to love. And I'll see you next time. Mwah.